Terrorist group. Let's go to our mayor, Tom McNamara. We are going to put Tom McNamara in the white nationalist category along with it. And one of the things that you'll notice is that there are similarities between the people that are in these categories. Usually, people who work for these institutions, these white power structures, these institutions that, that are pervasive in white supremacy and white nationalism, they're white nationalists. It's why they go to work. It's why they go into those offices or why they go into those systems. And even if they go into them with the intention of not being that way, because these systems are set up and structured in a white nationalist manner, if they exceed at their job and are successful at their job, they end up becoming white nationalists. They end up buying into the system of white nationalism. So we are going to put the mayor, Tom McNamara, in the white nationalist category, and then we are going to have a few conversations about his white nationalist actions and ideologies. Okay. I think one of the things that people have to understand about white nationalism as we get into talking about some of Tom's actions is that white nationalism means that whether it be finance is politics, economy is politics. So let's go. Everything. H. Rap Brown said, everything in your life is political. It's just about whose political ends does it serve. Everything in your life is political. It is just about whose political ends does it serve. He said it is a political decision that black people are junkies. It is a political decision that black people are lazy. It's a political decision that black people are athletes, that black people are musicians. That's a political decision. The same reason it's a political decision that white people are police officers. A political decision that most white people hold positions of power in this city and in this county and in this country. Those are political decisions. It's a political decision why certain schools don't have the adequate funding. It's a political decision why certain factories were built in certain areas. When you go back into the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, when you see factories and certain things being built, you see that when it was a factory that was going to have negative impacts on the environment, they would put it in the area where it was black people at. It is the reason why black people is more prevalent, it's the reason why asthma is more prevalent in black people, because there were things that were put in areas where black people were at that through generations bred asthma. When you talk about why high blood pressure and diabetes and certain things are prevalent in the black community, it takes you back to the manner in which the first Africans put over here were ever learned to eat, the things that they had left to them to eat. People, and it's one of those things where, again, when you have a critical conversation, it means going further back. It means cross-referencing. And so, since we can all sit here and know, maybe some people don't know this, but that they say that the very earliest humans were scared of snakes. And it became so ingrained, they were so scared of it, the fear was so deep that it became ingrained, almost instinctual, to be born and to be scared of a snake. And so, if that is something that can happen over time, the fact that you don't think that through generations of black people can have those same type of psychological traumas embedded in them, to be scared of police officers, or to have 6, 7, 8, if you could trace your family back to slavery and you survive, because that's another thing that's not spoken about enough, is that any black person that is existing in this nation right now is a survivor, is of a lineage of survivors. There are a plethora of black bloodlines of African bloodlines that were wiped out, of black descendants that never came into existence, whether that be from the Middle Passage and dying on the Middle Passage, where a whole family was wiped out, or whether that be through jumping over on the ships because they refused to be enslaved, whether that be through dying through enslavement, whether that be dying through the trials and tribulations of America being built as being a black person in that, whether it be Jim Crow vigilantism, all of these different things. To be here in an existence now means that you are a survivor. But when you realize that when it comes to surviving, there are things that you have to adapt. There are things that become instinctual. They speak about how when a group of people are in different lands, their bodies develop differently to adapt to that land, to adapt to that area. And that's what black people have had to do. They have had to adapt to being able to survive in America, to survive Americanism, to survive the evils that befall people of color in this city and in this community. And in this country as a whole. And so that's where we at. So then again, we want to take this back to time. Hold on, I gotta move this back again. It's shifting. Gotta move this back. We gonna stay we gotta keep it in the shade. I don't want it to die. I don't want it to overheat. We charging it too. So, so Tom McNamara, the mayor, white nationalism. He is a white nationalist. That is the category in which he falls in. Now. When excuse me, I'm drawing a blank. In Minneapolis, when George Floyd was murdered, Tom McNamara put out a tweet. In the tweet, he said the name of George Floyd. He said that justice should come quickly and expediently, and the officer should be held accountable. He talked about the emotions he felt for the family. And it was a tweet, so it was only 140 characters. He kept it concise. But he did all of those things when this happened outside of his city. When Jacob Blake was shot while dealing with the police officers in Kenosha, he made a video on Facebook, made a video and talked about how he felt for his family and talked about the issues of racism and, this in general American issue. And that's one of the characteristics of white nationalism is that they speak about it as if this issue that's bigger than them. It's this issue that's bigger than what's in their control. The police chief will tell you, oh, what can I do about, mass incarceration or it's beyond me, it's bigger than me, the mayor is bigger than me, is an American issue, a senator is bigger than me, and that's what they do. That's what they do. They find ways to try to acknowledge that it exists in some manner, because as a white nationalist, they must give credence to racism and to slavery and things of that nature in some manner, because they are so intertwined with white nationalism and with the nation of America. And so they want to be able to say, they need to be able to say that they overcame it. I think that's the thing that people don't understand about white nationalism. Let me move this back just a little bit more. Oh yeah, I think I'm tripping. It's good. That's the other thing people don't understand about white nationalism. I don't believe is that white nationalism, one of the key, it's the one of all these three groups that is the most fluid. It changes over time. It adapts. White nationalism adapts. See, white supremacy, the reason somebody being a white supremacist and doing the actions and the ideology of a white supremacist is more frowned upon today. The reason it's more frowned upon for KKK Clyde to call me a nigger than it is for KKK Kyle Saunders to cut the face of Jovan Fresco while he's tearing down the memorials for no reason is because it's more palatable for the taste buds of America now, because it's more politically correct now, because America has decided when they were in their efforts to be the world police, going out to these other countries trying to instill democracy and talk about how they were all for freedom and liberty, they kept coming up against the problem of seeing hypocritical when it came to the way they treated black people and people of color in their own nation. And so what they had to begin to do was to change the image of America. And in changing the image of America, it meant that you could no longer have senators that would be out there saying segregation now and segregation forever, which is what infamously was said by the senator in Alabama. You had to start having dog whistle words. I believe that's how they call them. You had to say, instead of saying you was going to keep those black people in shape and make sure those black people wasn't out protesting or wasn't out demonstrating. Nixon came into office and spoke about law and order. They speak about how Reagan was the best person to ever use the dog whistles. And so once that happened, and once it became in the interest of America because of their their efforts of imperialism, because of their desires to become an empire and to go to all of these countries and set up bases and get oil and whatever resources they could. Once they found that it was harder to do that with the image of America seeming so hypocritical, because they weren't giving those same things to the black people in their own nation, and they were treating the black people and people of color in their own nation so horrendously, they began to change the way that they were treating them overtly. They began to change the way that they were treating them in the public, the way that they would talk about them. It became it was commonplace to call black people niggers. Well, that's why you got a 60-year-old grandpa, 70-year-old man. He don't give no fuck about the niggers. Talking about the niggers down there at City Hall? Oh, you talking about those niggers that get a nigger that got shot by the police? That's nothing to them. It is through time America found that they had to change that. They had to adjust that. And so white nationalists act accordingly. Now, white supremacists not trying to hear none of that shit. Clyde's still letting that nigger fly around here. They still got they Confederate flags. They still want all their statues up. All of those things. They not no apologizing. Robert E. Lee just as much as a hero as Ulysses S. Grant to them. And so they holding on to those values. Those people are dwindling down and dying out some, because it's been different generations. There's a generation of white nationalists that exists now. So a time of white nationalism that is at the forefront now. It was a time when white supremacy was at the forefront. White nationalism is at the forefront. And so in that, one of the groups that fits into white nationalists the most are liberals. Liberals are some of the most white nationalist people you will ever encounter or ever deal with in your life. Bill Clinton, liberal. I guess maybe Bill Clinton might not be considered a liberal. I'm not going to get into finding that. I want to stay on the topic. But Tom will be considered a neoliberal or a liberal. He's a Democrat. The Democrats here have allowed the black community to be raped and pillaged for decades. I believe dating back, there's only been either Democrat or independent mayors elected here for the past 2 to 3 decades. The mayor here, Democrat, just ran we're not going to get into that. But the actions that have emanated from this man, dating back to when George Floyd have been killed, have been hypocritical in the sense that when it is time to speak about something that is happening outside of his domain or outside of his area, he'll condemn somebody being involved when he can do it without having to truly take a stance. Because as the mayor of Rockford, you can say whatever about Minneapolis and not have to lose no votes from it, not have to deal with no backfire from it. You in a whole different state in a whole different city. But you notice when Adam Toledo was shot by the police of Chicago, there was no statement from the mayor. He said nothing because it was no longer politically advantageous to say something. He only gained from saying George Floyd's name. He only gained from saying Jacob Blake's name. But there was a potential that he would lose something by saying Tyrus Jones' name when he was shot. So when Tyrus Jones was shot by the police and attempted to be murdered by the police, the same way Jacob Blake was shot by the police and attempted to be murdered by the police, there was no video that he did with his setting his little phone up and talking on his phone. There was no press conference, and then he did not say, even in the statement, he would not say the name of the man who had been shot by his police officers. It's one of the most despicable things that has happened in the midst of all of these things that have occurred. Top 5. And then he would follow that up with Denzel Duvant being assaulted and beat at the hands of his police department and put out no statement. Denzel Duvant, whose picture looked like people asked us multiple times if he was even still alive after seeing that picture. Picture looked like it could have been a modern picture of Emmett Till. Nothing. No statement. Jose Gonzalez Jr. shot by the Rockford Police Department while running away. He won't say the young man's name in a statement. White nationalist. He don't want white people to look bad. He don't want the police to look bad. When May 30th happened, And when property was damaged, and when the police officer's pride was damaged, and when the image of this country looked like it was damaged, you seen this man coming out of the woodworks with black people up there at that press conference. He had one press conference. He was up there looking almost one of the goofiest things I've seen in my 29 years being alive. He was up there with a mask that said, listen. Up there standing next to black people with a mask that say, listen. Looking about goofy as hell. That's the extent of the dog and pony show that he put on. And then when Tyrus Jones was shot, he couldn't even say his name. He didn't have a video. He didn't have a press conference. He put out a Facebook post. When Denzel Duvant was assaulted and beat, no name, no Facebook post, no Twitter post, no tweet, no video, no press conference. Business as usual for him. Jose Gonzalez Jr. shot by his police department. Third act of terrorism. Third act of police terrorism. He won't even say that young man's name. Facebook post, that's it. No press conference, no video. White nationalist. He's trying to preserve white nationalism. Trying to preserve the image of the police department. Trying to preserve the image of Rockford, Illinois. The most racist city in Illinois. Per capita. That's how we going to do it. People keep saying, what about Chicago? Per capita. Per capita. Like how people do violence and crimes and things like that. They do per capita. They do it based on how many things happen or what things happen, and then based on how many people live in the area that it happens in. So per capita, this is the most racist city in Illinois.